One thing which is very important to understand is that in chess, the memorization of knowledge, like a very large set of rules and a very large set of openings and theory, etc., is only useful if it's actually applicable in independent occasions. If we take, for example, an opening, I'll show you just very shortly an example from this. If we take an opening, for example, from a book or from wherever, and we memorize it in order to learn the theory, in order to basically be able to apply it, it's only useful if we understand what is better and what is important in the specific theory. Thus, it's the same for rules, and it's the same for basically everything. We need to understand which is important in any given position and which is worse. In order to get better, we focus on developing a thinking process. It's more important than focusing on learning. And if you want the best examples for this, then you have all these young prodigies who just suddenly get very, very good. They get so good because they have a very strong thinking process. That's important. And it's very easy for us now to understand why all the content that you've seen on YouTube doesn't really help you all that much. You don't know how to prioritize what you're given in every given content or video, and thus it doesn't really have an effect on your play. A video or a book or course are only useful if you can see a direct change in how you play after using them. So let's now talk about a thinking process that there was in one of my games against my own mentor, where I've lost. And you're gonna see how the thinking process that my own trainer uses against me works in here. A thinking process, sort of like the way that you do this, it's kind of like a set of questions that you ask yourself in every given situation. From this set of questions, you're gonna get the candidate moves that you should do, and then you're gonna calculate from each of these the best candidate in your opinion, and you're gonna make that move. You're gonna see this in action very soon. But in very short, the sort of like thinking process that he's using is, what are my opponent's weaknesses? How can I make my pieces more active? And what is my least active piece, and how can I make it more active as well? It's very important. E4, C5, knight f3, E6, C3, just like a regular opening. Queen takes D5, D4, knight f6. It's normally, it's happening a lot. Knight b to d2, c takes d4, and from the opening, you're gonna notice that I've made a sort of like a mistake. In the beginning, it doesn't look like a major mistake, but that is how players on very high levels think. So he utilized this against me, and you're gonna see this in action. I made the move, c takes d4. This seemingly regular move of the pawn takes is actually the main cause that made before. Why is this? Remember that we've said that in chess, my trainer thinks, what are my weaknesses? This creates a weakness. A weakness is kind of like either a square or a piece or a pawn that cannot be in this case, a weakness is a pawn that cannot be defended. That's the weakness. And you're gonna see how throughout this game, my opponent, what he's going to do is he's going to place as much pressure as possible into this pawn, this one pawn. It's going to, because of this, eventually fall. And once it does, he will have like a pawn advantage, which is enough to then go into a winning endgame. And using this one pawn advantage to queen and obviously to checkmate. That's how it goes. So, just to show this. Bishop e2, bishop e7, bishop c4, queen d6. One thing that I want to mention for people who watch this, why would he move his queen just one square back instead of all the way back? The reason is because he thinks also in terms of activity. Basically, one of the core question is, what are my opponent's weaknesses? The second one is, how can I progress my pieces as forward as I can and make them place more pressure towards the opponent? So when he moves his piece back, he's making sure that the queen will be as active as humanly possible. That's why he's doing this. Queen to d6, castle, b3, b6, bishop b2. I'll just progress a little bit through the lesser important moves, but you see he's just making pieces more active as well as I do. Knight c6. And in here, bishop to b2, bishop to b7, rook e1 in 96 happened then, and then in here I've made like an inaccuracy. So using our thinking process, what are my opponent's weaknesses? What is my least active piece and how can I make it more active? And how can I progress my pieces towards the enemy side of the board? These are the three questions we ask ourselves. Now I want you to ask yourself these exact same ones, just so that you'll have like practice with what's about to happen. Now, using this thinking process, what is weak on my opponent's side of the board? Not much that I see, but on my side, what is my least active piece right now? My rook, right? My rook doesn't help at all in any way given. That's the weakness, that's what we know. How can I make it now more active? Well, I could move it here to c1, but a2 will be a weakness. So simply, what I should have done was move this pawn ahead. It'll be supported by the bishop, won't be taken at all. So it's going to be fine. Moving this pawn, and then after, for example, he makes rook a to c8, then I can move my rook here, which is what should have happened. I've made an inaccuracy. Right, I've made the move knight to a4, which just helps my opponent to execute his plans more rapidly. He could just take, right, which is what he did. Knight takes, I took with the rook, and bishop here. Having one more piece that starts aiming at the d4 pawn, you will see how rooks, for example, are going to soon come to this file and start aiming at this pawn too. Here, queen d2 happens, knight e7. Rook e2, I have to move my rook back, and rook a to d8. So what I've just told you is actually what is happening. The rest of the game matters a bit less, but this particular part is very, very important because from this, first of all, before every move that we make, we ask a few questions. That's the thinking process, and that is going to let us know what is important and what is less important. So the first one is, what is weak? For example, I've made the weakness on d4. One thing that we can understand from this. Second thing is, how can I progress my pieces towards the center of the board and also more closer to the side of the opponent? So best if I could, for example, move them onto the fifth diagonal. For black, it's obviously the fourth one. That's the second thing. And the third one is to make sure that we're doing this properly, is to ask, what is my least active piece? 3 questions. That's a simple thinking process. You can start applying this already from, well, once you get off this video. If you want, and also very important, if you are right now anywhere below 1400, I make these videos particularly for players who are plateauing at this rating ranges. If you're, for example, an 800 and you are playing for like 4 months, this channel is made specifically for players like you. You can click on the subscribe button and you will see more information like this, which is more lesson oriented than other channels. Click the subscribe button. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next episode. Bye bye.